Well, what a spectacular question. Let me just say, I'm impressed with the question.
Okay, great.
There are two aspects to my answer.
Okay.
The first concerns the material toward the end of the question.
Okay.
And that is, yes, it is in fact true that if you increase generation lengths, you will slow down the rate of evolution. And there is even some evidence in our paleontological record that when you do that, you may then increase the risk that a species will go extinct. So that's my answer to the latter material to the question. Now,
okay.
was that clear enough for you, Justin?
Yeah, that was clear enough for me. I understand it totally. Mm-hmm.
I'm basically agreeing
with the premise of the question.
Questioner, yeah, the second half.
Okay.
But the first half of the question, I don't agree with the premise, in that evolution really is not about optimizing species survival.
It isn't?
And it is absolutely not. No. And a lot of people have this misconstrual. It's actually not due to Darwin. It's due to a lot of other people who started to write about evolution in the 19th century. People like Herbert Spencer, who was not a biologist. And a lot of that non-biological thinking got imported in the 20th century, even into badly written high school biology textbooks, of which there are many. And it's the understanding many people derive from the theory of evolution by natural selection. So I'll just say, that whole premise is not true. Instead, what evolution focuses on when natural selection is powerful is the maximizing the net reproduction of individuals. Not even their survival, but their net reproduction. So there's a little paradox that evolutionary biologists are fond of mentioning, which is that if you have a gene that will jack up your reproduction when you're young but kill you sooner, evolution by natural selection will often say, oh, let's go for that.
Okay.
You know, you might imagine this, if you're old enough to know who this is, as a Jimi Hendrix gene. You know, Jimi Hendrix was absolute, rock star god.
He was, yeah.
In the late 60s, early 70s. It's well documented Jimi Hendrix slept with hundreds, if not thousands, of women during that period of his being a rock star god. And then he dies before the age of 30. Now, if, evolution could magically give you, Justin, that gene. If let's say there's a gene that made you into such a god, so attractive to females, and gave you all those opportunities to reproduce, you went out and developed reproduction, but you were dead before the age of 30 or 35, evolution would say, man, I like that gene. I want more of that gene. Whereas if there was a gene, for example, that would decrease your reproduction over your adult lifespan by 10 or 20%, but enable you to live forever, natural selection might not like that gene at all. So that's sort of the hard edge of evolution. Evolution is in a sense not your friend. Evolution is the friend of your gametes.
Okay, right. Which,
by way of exculpation, might explain a lot of otherwise inexplicably pathological male behavior.
Right, yeah. I've read some of the selfish gene, and I guess that would explain the strong drive to procreate that's been seems to have evolved in humans, right? Before we get on to a couple of other questions here, I would just want to give a little promotion here for a couple of areas that Michael, our guest, Dr. Michael Rose, has been involved in. I see there's a new Wikipedia page that I've got a graphic here on experimental evolution. Great read. I just kind of touched on it a little bit before the show, and also many of you may be familiar. I don't know if you've read this one, The Long Tomorrow, by Michael Rose. I believe that was written in 2005, correct? 2005.
Correct.
And also, Michael Rose. Oh. Well, folks, looks like our connection with Michael was dropped accidentally. We'll dial him. Sorry about that. We'll dial him back up here in a second.
Hello?
Yes, we're back. We're back. I don't know what happened there. Just kind of lost our... Huh?
Call got dropped.
Yeah, dropped call, but we're back. Dropped call, but we are back and live on the air. I was just going to talk a little bit about also that besides the book, the Wikipedia page, also you can find Dr. Rose in the documentary film exploring life extension and the scientific conquest of death, the book produced by the Immortality Institute. So, a couple of things you can check out in your spare time. Now back to a question here. Just a simple question about your fruit flies, because people are, pretty interested in. I mean, it's a pretty unique experiment, and you did show that. You could extend the lives of Drosophila dramatically. What is the longest-lived fruit fly you've ever had in your experiments?
Oh, we once had a fly live about 140 days.
140 days, and how does that compare to wild populations?
Oh, in the wild, a fruit fly is very lucky to live a week.
A week, and 140 days is about, I don't know how many weeks. I can't quite do the math here. But that's a dramatic, obviously, increase. And then how much has the lifespan increased from the time you began breeding the fruit flies? Say, you went through a couple generations, you noticed an increase in lifespan with this directed evolution, and then with your latest, the most recent experiments with the fruit flies, how much did that increase? Or basically, are you just saying it went from a few days to 140 days?
Well, you asked, your first question was sort of
a different.
What's the longest lived individual?
The individual, right?
Versus in my lab we ever produced versus how long fruit flies live in the wild, and that's not really a fair question because that gives roughly a 20-fold increase.
Okay.
What you really would be interested in, what's the average lifespan that we've been able to accomplish, and the best way to think of it is in terms of a ratio to what normal flies, given exactly the same environmental conditions, do. And right now, I think it's a fair statement to say we're at better than 4 times longer lived. So, in other words,
4 times longer.
over the decades that this experiment's been going on, they've been getting longer and longer lived.
Okay.
All the time.
Okay.
And I'll just say, Justin, this is again really good news for your listeners because there's absolutely nothing in the biology of aging that resists the extension of lifespan. If you find the right controls by whatever means, evolution is perfectly happy for you to come up with a way to make animals live way longer. There's no friction. It's not like you're imagining pushing against a rock uphill. It just gets harder and harder. Nothing like that. That rock will just roll. There's no resistance.
You just have to figure out the way to roll it, right?
Exactly.
You just have to figure out how to roll it.
Exactly.
Okay. And since we're on the flies here, just one other question about your experiments with the fruit flies. How many generations did it take before the fruit flies demonstrated a mortality plateau, or the biological immortality, as you've called it?
Okay, so this is an important point to explain, Justin, because
good.
It turns out that animals like fruit flies and other insects that people have worked on come with biological immortality from the start. I didn't produce biological immortality in my fruit flies. It was already there. What I was able to do was to tune that as well as the process of aging. So right now, our best guess is that most aging species, except for the ones that age in one spectacular burst, like Pacific salmon, most aging species, and we're a pretty typical aging species in that respect, probably undergo a transition from aging to a natural biological immortality in which aging stops. It doesn't mean aging reverses naturally.
Right.
It means you get worse and worse and worse, and then at a particular age range, that process stops. That is yet another point against the idea of a cumulative damage model.
Right.
And this is a point where Aubrey de Grey and I have gone many rounds. I mean, the email
I know.
between us on this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks and got very, very technical.
Oh, sure. Probably more technical than we can get here tonight.